Leslie Mitchell, class of 1981, is a third generation Cal alum and lifelong Golden Bear fan who writes articles about notable people associated with our university. You can visit her website, calbearshistory.com, or follow her on Twitter, also known as X, under Cal Bears History, where she posts stories of interesting students, faculty, and alums. Leslie is an absolutely wonderful resource when it comes to learning more about people associated with our university who have gone on to do great things in this world. Today, we're going to learn all about the first two women associated with the University of California at Berkeley who won a Nobel Prize, Carol Greider and Elizabeth Blackburn. Welcome again to the show, Leslie.
Well, thank you as always for your kind words, Riza. I appreciate them. Today we've got these two amazing women who won the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 2009. And just so it's clear, somebody said to me, well, which one was it, physiology or medicine? I said, well, that's the actual name of the prize is physiology or medicine. So either one gets you a Nobel if you've done amazing enough work. Carol Greider got her PhD at Cal in 1986. I believe, which I've always been tickled to know that, she was in Berkeley the same time I was in Berkeley, although I haven't gotten my Nobel yet. I don't know why.
Still waiting. Might still happen.
And Elizabeth Blackburn was a professor at Cal at the time they did the work, and they did the work together to get that earned them the Nobel. And she's now at UCSF.
Right, and Carol Greider, so she was the graduate student in Elizabeth Blackburn's lab, and
Right.
so she did this work to earn the Nobel Prize while a graduate student, because I think it was in 1984 when they made this big discovery of the enzyme telomerase. Is that right?
That's what the pronunciation guide tells me. And I apologize to science people if we butcher any of the pronunciations. Because I
But
was a history major, and so,
well, yeah, and I've known about this for at least some time now because it's kind of the latest thing you hear about with longevity and how to age well and to keep yourself in tip-top shape as long as you can, essentially to increase your health span as opposed to just increasing your lifespan. And a big part of that apparently has to do with the telomeres that are associated with your chromosomes and basically, if I understand things correctly, it's this enzyme that will help lengthen your telomeres, which is critical if you want to live longer. Because once your telomeres shorten enough, and every time your DNA is replicated, which is happening all the time, the telomeres are growing shorter every single time it
well,
replicates.
as I understand it, it's to do with cell division. So when the
Right.
cell divides, obviously it's losing half of its chromosome. The chromosomes being kind of tugged in half. And so that means the telomeres, Elizabeth Blackburn put it like this: they're like the ends of those little caps on the end of your shoelace that keeps the shoelace from unraveling. And that's what the telomeres do. They keep the chromosome from unraveling. And somehow the chromosomes like get re-stretched out, rebuilt. And that's what they were trying to figure out. Well, what's the mechanism by which those chromosomes, because if you just kept cutting them in half and cutting them in half every time the cell divided, pretty soon there wouldn't be anything left.
Well, look at you. All that science stuff. Look at you.
Well, I
Not
can read the
bad.
Nobel Prize website too.
I'm impressed. So, yeah, I thought it was just really incredible to think that this discovery that they made was back in 1984, and yet they didn't win the Nobel Prize for 25 years later, right, in 2009.
Right.
So it just goes to show how much time it may take between when a discovery is first made and when you're finally officially recognized for the magnitude of that discovery.
Well, yeah, it's pretty typical that a time elapses. I think, first of all, there's a lot of other people in line for Nobel Prizes ahead of you who are older. And it does take time for the ramifications of a discovery to make themselves clear. And typically other people see your discovery and then they start working on like, oh, I have an idea about how that might affect my work. And then eventually, it's recognized as, hey, this was a big deal. And this really had an effect on things. And I guess
Right.
what it really affects is two things. Primarily is research on cancer, because I guess if the telomeres don't work right, they go wonky. The chromosomes go wonky, and then the cells start dividing improperly, and then you get cancer. And then the other thing that they affect is aging, that you were talking about initially. That
Right. Well, I think it's just this delicate balance between where you want the telomeres to be long as possible so that you don't have cell death. But at the same time, if it grows unimpeded with too much telomerase, that could lead to unchecked growth, which would result in cancer. At
right.
least that's my general understanding of things, and I may be completely off on that, so apologies. Uh,
Yeah, that was my reading of it. And again, we're not exactly science people, so if we mess it up, to apologies to Professors Greider and Blackburn and to all of our scientifically
well,
inclined
and I
listeners.
wanted to point out too that these are the very first two people that we've covered in our Cal history segment who are still alive, and so it was kind of funny. I shared with Leslie that in a rush I decided, well, maybe we should call them and see if they'd be willing to be on the podcast. And of course, I only got voicemails, so I didn't even. I kind of thought better of it, and like, well,
I
maybe they
bet they
wouldn't
could have
really.
explained it better than we did.
Yeah, probably. So hey, if this finds its way to Elizabeth Blackburn and Carol Greider, we would love to have you on the show at some point.
One
But
of the things that I wanted to mention about Carol Greider, because I just find it so amazing and extraordinary for Cal as well, is she had real problems with dyslexia her whole life. She grew up being put in remedial classes because, in her words, I thought I was stupid. That is a direct quote from her, because she was dyslexic. And here's a Nobel Prize winner in remedial classes. It just kind of blows your mind. She eventually learned to manage her dyslexia by just memorizing the words. She couldn't sound them out, she said, but she could just memorize exactly what the word was. And so this really developed her memory skills, which she said later helped her a lot. So she did okay as an undergrad, but then when she was applying for graduate school, she didn't have very good GRE scores because the dyslexia isn't really user friendly for those kinds of standardized tests. And most schools at that time had a hard cutoff. If you didn't have a minimum GRE score that they'd established, they wouldn't even look at your application. So I think she applied to 14 graduate schools, and all but two didn't even look at her application and turned her down flat. And one of the two that didn't was Cal.
right, well, I understand it was Cal and Caltech, and
Right.
that was pretty good to be included in that group. And fortunately for us, she chose wisely and decided to work with Elizabeth Blackburn at Cal. So
Yeah, she's got this great quote that I found about that whole process, and she said, if UC Berkeley had done the same thing that many of the other schools did, which was to apply a cutoff, then I wouldn't have gone to graduate school and made the discovery of a telomerase and won the Nobel Prize. So go Bears. I love that.
go Bears. That's pretty good. That is
Well,
very
and
good.
as we were talking about earlier, she probably picked Cal really because her birthday, April 15th, is the same day that the axe was stolen in 1889. Excuse me, it was liberated by Cal students in 1899. So I'm sure that was the real reason.
That must have been it has to be,
Dexter,
right?
you
No,
know?
no question. Absolutely. Well, who knows? If she was there for the play, she would have been on campus during that time potentially. Is that
I think
82?
so. Yeah.
Maybe, right? So, yeah, anyway,
So there you go.
we're probably conjecturing a little bit with
We're
all
probably
that.
hallucinating, but that's okay. Our telomeres are going crazy. Elizabeth Blackburn is also a very interesting woman. She grew up, of all places, in Tasmania. She's Australian. She's the first Australian woman ever to win a Nobel Prize. She grew up on the island of Tasmania, south of Australia. Went to Cambridge university in England for her doctorate work, and then she came to Cal and recruited Carol Greider, and they made this discovery that the day that like the dam broke, where they like their research, they'd been checking it and checking it and checking it, and the day that they went down to the lab and looked at the results that gave them the belief that they had reached the solution to the enzyme was Christmas Day of 1984. So I love that they're working on Christmas Day, and that's when they made their breakthrough.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Well, yeah, and Elizabeth Blackburn, to read some articles about her, she's very data driven, and they felt like this is amazing. This sounds right, but they also wanted to go through all the steps to make sure that they confirmed this every which way to make sure that what they had stumbled upon was accurate and correct.
In her subsequent work on telomerase, Elizabeth Blackburn has come to a lot of conclusions about how lifestyle, as you were talking about, affects it, and stress particularly from what she's been able to determine, is a huge has a huge impact. And that's why a lot of times people that have a lot of stress issues in their lives do tend to be more prone to various kinds of illnesses, whether it be aging, premature aging issues, or cancer, or other issues. Is that that there's a physiological connection between stress and various kinds of physical problems.
Right. Well, yeah, she suggests aging reversal and care for one's telomeres through lifestyle, managing chronic stress, exercising, eating better, getting enough sleep, avoiding tobacco use. And she also cautions about pills or creams or anything that proclaim to lengthen telomeres and protect the body from aging, that none of those products have any scientific proof of being anti-aging, and that the key to preserving your telomeres and stimulating telomerase activity comes from leading a healthy life.
So I can't just order that cream I saw on late night TV and it's going to make me 20 years old again.
Yeah, you
Don't
can't
tell me
believe
that.
everything you read, right? Or everything you see. That's right.
Well, there are a couple of amazing women, and I'm very proud that they're both associated with the University of California, Berkeley. We
Absolutely.
now have a total of 5 women Nobel laureates from Cal, so there have been 3 more since 2009. It's pretty impressive because
No question.
in chemistry, the other 3 are all in chemistry, and I think there's only been something like I forget what the number was, 15 women ever that have won the Nobel in chemistry, and 3 of them are from Cal. We're really out there.
That's pretty good. No
I say
question.
we. I was a history major. They don't give a Nobel in history.
Hey, well, associated with the University of California at Berkeley, so
Us,
we
right?
will take it. Well, as the comedian Stephen Wright once famously said, "Man, I would kill for a Nobel Prize." Thank you, thank you. I'll be here all week. All right. Well, anyway, Leslie, thank you so much for shedding some light on Elizabeth Blackburn and Carol Greider, the very first women to get Nobel Prizes associated with the University of California at Berkeley.
Go Bears!
Go Bears!